Hi everyone, Melanie Muenchinger here, illustrator for Gina K Designs. Today I have a new project for you with my newest set from Gina K Designs, Fabulous Flowers, and I'm showing a card and a technique that I shared during our release party at Stamp TV, which I like to look at or think of as black embossed magic. So black magic is a technique where you stamp with a white craft or pigment ink onto black cardstock and then use your colored pencils to color in those bold white stamped images. Really fun technique. It produces a really interesting look because it's the opposite of stamping on a white or light colored cardstock with that black. You also get the nice texture of the pencils, but I really enjoy doing this technique with embossing powder and alcohol markers. That's what I used in this sample. It's a really neat way to just really provide a huge pop of color, but also using the alcohol markers, the marker will actually sink into the black cardstock if you're not coloring on the embossing, so you don't have to worry about going outside the lines. That's really nice. It goes really quickly, and you don't have to press as hard to get that really bold color. So I'm going to show you how to do this in just a couple different looks. The products that we're going to be using for today's card, I've got the Fabulous Flower stamp set, excuse me. On this particular sample, I used the Scripty Love Sentiment. This was last month's incentive stamp, which was free with a $75 order from Gina K Designs. Instead, I'm going to be using what is the new incentive set, the Vintage Rose. So it's got some beautiful greetings in it. And this is available when you place a qualifying order of $75 or more. This is available now for $10.95. Okay, then we're going to be using some Versamark ink. This is a watermark stamp pad by Sukaniko. This is the best pad that I know of for doing embossing. You can also emboss though using another sticky ink like this white craft ink, but it doesn't adhere as well. The powder doesn't adhere as well to the pigment ink. So I'm going to be using this just for the purposes of our design today so that you can see how I'm building up this scene better with my flowers, leaves, and stems. But the Versamark, it sticks better. So I have one already embossed. I just want you to be able to see my stamping because this watermark is just so dark on the black paper. It's hard to see in the video. I hope you'll understand what I mean in a second if that sounds confusing. I'm using just some detail white embossing powder from Stampendous. I've got a heat gun. This is by Marvy. Just some adhesive for adhering my mat to my base. I've got some of the Gina K Pure Luxury lipstick cardstock and some of the black onyx, and I will post the dimensions for those below. Just a medium-sized block for these small stamps. And then I'm using the Spectrum Noir markers today. So I've got the BP1, the BP4, the PP2 for the pink flowers, the GB3 and the OR3 for the orange flowers, and finally the DG2 and the DG3 for the leaves and stems. So I wanted to show you just an example here on the back. So as I said, this is done with just the white craft ink and colored pencils. Here you can see what the colored pencils look like on their own on the black cardstock. So this one I actually stamped it in white and then used white embossing powder on it and then the alcohol markers on top. This one I used the Versamark with white embossing powder and the alcohol markers on top. It might be hard to see, but I can tell that there's a lot more detail in this stamp. You lose a little bit of it with the craft ink just because it's thick like paint, and so it's going to blend a little bit on the lines or maybe kind of puddle on the edges just a bit because it's thicker than the watermarking ink. Now this one right here, I just wanted to show so you could see the difference of how it looks on the black cardstock and kind of my own curiosity as well. This is stamped in the white pigment ink with clear embossing powder on top. That's kind of nice because then you don't have to worry about the little stray flecks of powder being embossed and showing up on your mat, but it does not produce as opaque or white of a foundation for you to lay that marker onto. So this was colored with alcohol markers. This last one, this is embossed with the white embossing powder so you can see how much brighter it is. But instead, I just used some water-based memento markers on it. So I wanted to show how important it is to use an alcohol marker. If you think about what happens when you try to draw with a water-based marker on a non-porous surface, something that's clear and glossy, how it tends to want to resist, not dry, and it's just not a very vibrant color. So that was colored with the memento marker. So just so you can see the difference. Okay, so this is what we're going for. This has already been stamped in the Versamark and embossed with the white powder, but I'm going to stamp it now in the craft ink so that you can see how I would build this scene. We want to start with our flowers, and then we're going to go to the stems, and then finally add the leaves. So I'm going to take this one that I think of as a sunflower, but it could be another type of flower. And I'm just going to create a cascade of flowers that's going to come down here. So I'm going to stamp one. And then I'm going to turn the stamp just a bit so that it looks a little different each time. And then I just want my eye to travel down the design. So I've got another one here. And then one more right here. And I'm trying to leave room in the middle for more flowers and for those stems and leaves. Now I'm going to add the other flower. So I'm going to have a total of 7 flowers, an odd number. So I'm going to put one down here at the bottom. And one here. And one here. Now, if you're not familiar with stamping with Versamark, you'll be able to see it on your own, but it's just difficult to see in the video. Okay. Now let's go ahead and do those centers for the sunflowers. And I'm going to clean these stamps after I'm done stamping. And you don't have to line these up exactly. They have kind of little notches that you can fit it in, but I'm not really trying. I'm just shooting for the middle there. All right, now we're going to do our stems. And even though there's some overlapping, you don't have to mask. I'm going to do this the way that I did last week, where you can just simply ink up the stem and then start at the top. You want it to look like it's going through the middle of that flower. And you're going to just press down and you'll see the white disappearing because it's going down onto the paper, and then you pull it away. And then you can do the same thing below it. So I'm just turning my stamp as I go so that I can have these going off to the left or the right. And I want some of them to be going off of the mat. I always like something to go off the mat. Just more interesting, a layout. And then this one, I'm just going to stamp just down till it looks like it's hitting that sunflower. Okay, now let's add our leaves. And there's 2 of these. I've got a mirror image of it, so you can use one or both. I'm just going to do one to save time. And I'm just kind of trying to make it go back and forth so that I can have a little green here, 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 here. We can go ahead and put, I'm just going to put one more up here just to fill this in a little bit more. Okay, and then finally we will do our greeting. So I'm going to do this all my love. And the greeting is a lot sharper too when you do it with the Versamark. I'm going to put it up a little bit on this one instead of down lower in the corner. Okay, and I'll clean this when I'm finished. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and emboss this. Now this has started to dry a little bit, so again, it's not as sticky as the Versamark ink, but I just want you to see the process of embossing if you haven't done this before. So we're going to take our powder and just be really generous with pouring it on top of that mat so that it is covering all the images. And this is all going to get funneled back into the jar. And then you're just going to want to wipe away any stray flecks that you have. And you can use a fine little brush, tweezers, Q-tip, your fingers to get this off. The finer the powder it is, the more that it tends to want to stick to your mat. There, you could use a little embossing buddy or a cornstarch filled sock. to kind of cut down on some of that static. Try not to touch my mat more than I need to keep from getting that static or any moisture or oil from my fingers so that it wants to stay on there. You can also rub it with a dryer sheet to prevent that, but I actually kind of like this look with the flowers just because it reminds me of dusty pollen. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to turn on our heat gun, careful not to touch the powder because it still is going to move around at this point. And we want to hold it a couple inches away, and we're just going to move it around until that flat powder starts to look shiny and more opaque. And you're going to see that some of the drier areas, it's not going to look as solid. So I really recommend that you have a Versamark pad in your collection if you want to do embossing. It's also really beautiful for just creating that watermark look without embossing. So you keep turning it, making sure there's no areas where the powder hasn't melted. It looks really ivory at first, this one, but then it dries with more of a whiter finish. Okay. So you can see how much more solid this one is and picking up all of that detail when you use the Versamark. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and color this one because that's going to be a smoother, more opaque base to really pick up those markers. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do, I want to color in my stems and leaves. So I'm going to start with my lighter color. So this is the DG2. So I'm just going to go over that with the lighter green. And I'm going to swirl it into the center so you don't have to be that exacting with it. And you can see if I go over the black paper, you don't even see that marker. So that's kind of nice. If you get any residue on here, you can just go off on your scratch paper. Then I'm going to dot on just a little bit of this darker green, and I want to put this under each of the stems where the flower would be casting a shadow, and then just a little dot of it or a flick onto each of those little leaves. And this and then the larger leaf in my Euro flowers too. It's one of my favorite all-time leaves. I just love this one. And because this has this glossy finish, the embossing, it kind of works like glossy cardstock that it tends to want to just keep moving, so it's really easy to blend if you go back on with your lighter marker. Okay? All right, now I want to dot on just a little bit of this darker, the DG3, into the centers there and just at the bottoms, just so that those will pop out a little bit more. So just dotting some on. And you can blend that if you want. I'm gonna have it stand out a little bit more though. I'm gonna take the GB3 now, and I'm just going to just lightly, see, I'm not even going in the same direction as each of the petals. Scribble some of that on. And then I'm going to take this OR3, and I'm just going to do just some quick little flicks here. I thought this was really pretty with the lipstick. And here. So these are going in the direction of the petals, up, and then a few at the bottom. And then I'm going to take the GB3 again, and I'm just going to do, you could do either some tip to tip, or you can just go in and blend that because, like I said, it still wants to move a little bit. But if you want them to be a little bit more vibrant and bright, just go back on again to add some more brush strokes. All right, now I'm going to take my really light pink, and I'm just going to put that on the outside of these flowers. So I like how it can go really pale or really dark depending on what marker you have. That looks really pretty, just like that. A couple of these I wanted to have with just a slightly darker center, and then the other two to have a really, really, really bright fuchsia. So I'm going to take this BP4. That is really what's making this design pop. So if you have, and I'm just put a little bit on here. If your design is just not giving you the excitement that you need, you probably just need to go a little bit bolder. I'm just going to keep those as dots, but I'm going to go in and I'm just going to blend this pink just a little bit more. Just so it looks a little bit smoother and not as scribbled. And that's it. That's all I'm going to do. Now I'm going to adhere this to my base. And there's several other color bases that you could have maybe chosen for the card base, but I just really like this one. And that's it. Card is complete. I hope you enjoy this technique, experimenting with your embossing powder and your alcohol markers. You could use other ones besides Spectre Noir, obviously. And then here, this was the one that I colored earlier. So this is the one with the craft ink and the Versamark. So again, you see how much different, how opaque that is compared to this, and what great detail and what a great base it gives you for your coloring. Thank you for watching this video today. I hope you'll visit my blog, Hands, Head, and Heart, for more ideas and inspiration, and at Stamp TV for all of our Gina K stamps. Thank you for watching today. I hope you'll subscribe to my channel. God bless.